Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate you guys, everybody taking the time out of your day. I think I've seen most of you. Some of you have gotten information from the AOA that their email went out. Big round of applause for Julie. She's the PAC representative from AOA. They've been extremely supportive, particularly here in Burbank. There's other organizations that have been also very supportive. There's, I think, a really important person that just walked into the room. He has been on our side, fighting behind the scenes as council member Christopher Rosati. On that same note, one of the things I think is really critical to talk about and to mention is one of the things that's happening behind the scenes that you don't see it very often is council members is at Mullins. So council member Mullins has been working as hard for our issues, for our cause, to have a fair and a very balanced approach to tenant protections and rent control. With AB 1482, that is statewide rent control, and that's what we want. Everybody's okay with AB 1482. Right. What is happening right now, and Councilmember Mullins has been on the dais because Councilmember Rosati has been forced to recuse himself, and so she is now the lone single vote that we have in the single voice that is advocating for housing providers and tenants alike. She is not for the hard 3% rent cap. Everybody's heard of the Burbank Tenants Union. Those folks are aligned with the Democratic Socialists of LA and every organization that is aligned with them. So you hear messaging that is identical to what's happening in the city of Los Angeles. If it's going to be in San Francisco or if it's going to be in New York City, they all have that same message because they're highly coordinated and we all know and suspect very well funded. We got together, myself and other people that have been in the chambers, Mr. Ron Bax, who's going to be speaking in a moment. It was very nice, April, you said that you wouldn't be here without me, but it truly would not be if it was not for Councilmember Mullins and for Mr. Ron Bax. One of the very emotional things that Ron shared after 3 years, Ron has been talking to in council about what the issues are of cost and what the things are affecting all of housing providers, insurance, everything. That's crazy. But Ron actually, one of the things he said to council after the Burbank Tenants Union went into our political action committee, found out how much money he had donated, because we are a political action committee means we are full disclosure. So we have to be able to have all that. BTU does not. But when they called out Mr. Bax, and they said, oh, you're doing this. And so what Mr. Bax did, Ron did, he went to the lectern, spoke to the dais and said, you know why I'm doing this? Because I'm protecting my family's future. I'm protecting the housing for my tenants, but I'm spending the money because this is my investment. This is what I've worked my entire life for, and I don't want you to take it away. And the reason I'm involved, I like a good fight. I like to fight against what's wrong, and what they're trying to do is wrong. The Burbank Tenant Union is trying to do things, and this is what's going to happen that they're going to be talking about. They're going to be talking about these tenant projections, which are going to be a hard rent cap at 3%, and they want to abolish no-fault evictions. So for me, I have an ADU. I have my 90-year-old father-in-law living in there. And if, for example, if there was a renter in there, which is what we fully intended to do, if no-fault evictions were the case, I couldn't have them move out to have my father-in-law move in. Also, one of the things that we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about is data collection. Has everybody heard of what's happening in Pasadena with their rent registry? That is a nightmare. So it's Simon Gibbons, and we also have Blake Boyd, the founders of the Pasadena Housing Providers, PHP. One of the greatest things happened. They were able to reach out to me. Now we are aligned. So we have the PHP, which is fighting and actually suing the city of Pasadena for Measure H, which is their rent control. They're saying because it violates the Costa-Hawkins. So there's a lot of things that are happening that we're going to be very supportive of them. The data collection is not exactly a rent registry, but it is something that's going to very likely going to be deliberated, we believe and hope, on Tuesday 28th, this Tuesday, 4 o'clock, April 7th, we're doing a rally. We want all of you there. We want all the signs because that's this conference, this press conference, this media conference that we're doing right now is going to be able to create that B-roll, those little samples of what our speakers and myself are going to be talking about. We're going to send to all the news agencies to say, guess what? We're going to have a fight. Also, universal just cause is going to be likely brought up. And this is one of the things that we're really afraid of. Because if you own a home, you have an ADU, you're not necessarily covered by AB 1482. But what they want, what they're going to deliberate, and what the BTU wants, is they want to be able to say it's universal. Universal rent control. You own a house, you have an ADU, you have anything. If you're renting it, you're going to have to then register it. And you're going to have to be controlled by it. That's ultimately what they want. So again, I really want to emphasize the tremendous support that we've been getting from Christopher Rosati, all of the community, and also again, I cannot emphasize enough how critically important Councilmember Zette Mullins has been to this fight. I want to end with this one thing. One of the reasons that I'm really active and so passionate about this is that the City Council members, Mayor Nikki Perez, Councilmember Constantine Anthony, and particularly Vice Mayor Tomo Takahashi have not been listening to us. They have not been looking at the data. They have not been gathering the information that is critical to make a balanced and fair decision, and that's what we want. We want to be heard, and we want them to be fair. So with that, thank you very much for being here again. Welcome, Councilmember Christopher Rosati.
Thank you everyone for being here. I'm very, very elated to see that you guys are organizing, because they are. The emails are coming in. I can tell you that they're going to be ready to dominate the minutes at our council meeting. I'm speaking today as a resident of Burbank and not as a council member. The FTPC has ruled that I cannot participate in the meeting. We won't go down that rabbit hole because I spent 6 months fighting it. I haven't decided if I'm going to speak at the meeting or not. I am a council member, and for me to get up and speak for 1 minute, because you're only going to have 1 minute to speak. I don't know if I can say anything that's really effective, but I'm starting to think that if I do have the 1 minute, I might just simply say, put it on the ballot. Put it on the ballot again. Again. Because 3 council members should not be able to dictate the course of our economy in Burbank. And the damage that this will do is going to be extensive. I think when you go to speak, and I don't care if the meeting's till 2 o'clock in the morning, you have to fight for your property rights, and you're in a dogfight. Let me tell you.
My name is Anna Coley, and I'm a housing provider in the City of Burbank, and been a housing provider for the better part of 30 years. I oppose rent control in the City of Burbank, first of all, because, as we said before, it was voted down by over 30% of the voting populace here in Burbank. The thing that sets Burbank apart is our quality of life. And as we look at other cities, Los Angeles, Santa Monica, here in the Valley, Van Nuys, the quality of life just can't compare to Burbank. And I believe that this is worth fighting for, because rent control essentially equals urban decay. I have yet to see one example where it does not. If we have a very stringent rent control, I'm not going to be able to improve my properties. I like to maintain my properties. I have pride of ownership. I work with the renters that I have. If there's a problem, I see to it that it is immediately taken care of. Because the way, when I first purchased my building, I looked at it and I said to myself, I would live here. I really would. And if push ever came to shove, I would live there. So I take the perspective of the renter. I want to live in a nice, clean, well taken care of property. I think that's what most people want. And rent control simply will not work. It will create a complete disparity. You see Santa Monica, where you have people locked into low rental units. The units are not exactly in the best of condition. Yet, as much it limits upward mobility, as much as they would like to move up, they can't, because the new buildings that have come in are not subject to rent control. And so their rents, obviously, are much higher than what the other people can afford. I don't want to see that extreme disparity happening in this city. It's what makes the city so great. That we have excellent police, excellent city services. You don't have to wait 2 years to get a pothole fixed. The needs are addressed in a short order. That's why my parents came to Burbank. My parents owned property in Los Angeles, East LA, Boyle Heights to begin with. And they did quite well up until the 70s, when rent control was imposed in the city of Los Angeles. When that happened, they could not maintain their properties. And this, my father was a carpenter. He did the majority of the repairs on the property himself. But he could not keep up, because they simply could not raise the rents to the point where it covered their expenses. And we're not greedy. The housing providers I've spoken to, we just want to make a living. This is a business. This is a business we have chosen. And it's for our kids. It's for our retirement. I chose it because it is my retirement. I worked in entertainment, so there's no guarantee that I would have a pension. My rental property is my pension. I have to work for it. I have to protect it. And as I said, my parents could not maintain their property. They eventually had to sell it because it simply was not economically viable. My parents were very proud of their property. They tried to keep it up and simply could not. And I do not want to have that happen here in this city. And I firmly believe that you have to fight for what you believe in. And this is what I'm fighting for. And you may lose, but at least I can say I went down swinging. Thank you.
And now, the co-founder of Burbank Fair Housing, Mr. Rombax.
And these guys are a hard act to follow. As far as the rent registry, which has now been given the euphemism of data collection, there are laws that prevent me from giving out any personal information on a tenant, even if it's from the police department requesting it, because it's private information. And what do you think, as far as any information on the tenant or their domicile, how much rent you're paying? How are we going to say that that doesn't violate that trust? If the city pursues this course, I will send a letter to my tenants informing them of the ordinance and offering them to agree to disclosure, to prohibit the disclosure, or to not respond, which I will take as them saying no. And let the city try and do data mining without a full set of data. What are they going to do? It's been a long understanding that a demand for a federal identification number, your social security number, your EIN, your TIN, can be requested by entities conducting financial transactions for you. So it's reportable on your tax return. What is the city going to do? One of the first things they want on the sample information they're requesting is your federal identification number. What is the value of knowing how many bedrooms there are? What it gets down to is the one time I was on a jury and I was the foreman, we were beat into that the fair price is that what the seller wants and the buyer is willing and able to give. That's a lot of money. It's in the eyes of the beholder, another way of putting it. What possible reason would they need to know why the previous tenant vacated? They want to know if it was no fault, at fault, eviction, etc. That's ancient history. What does that have to do with this tenancy? So why are they asking for that? They want the start date of the tenancy. Initial rent, current rent, is ancient history. Because if there's ever a claim, they're going to want to ask the tenant, what the housing provider, what the current conditions are. Because the data could be old. All right? So if there is a claim by a tenant that we're charging too much rent, they need to go get the current data. Why do you need data collection? I think we're asking for the wrong thing. We're asking why the city needs it. We need to ask, how is it going to be used? Right? The fundamental question is, why is the city acquiescing to the BTU's demands that it attack housing providers? The fact that other cities have imposed rent control, which is something they always want the staff to go through and research, should not be a consideration, unless the dismal effects that have always occurred is also included. Why does Burbank want to be a lemming? We have had 8 actions by the city attorney's office. That's on a report that Chris brought up. And when he was talking at the VIOR a while ago, he said 3, and I thought he misspoke, and I called him out for that. I learned yesterday that of the 8 that referred to the city attorney, okay, that they sent a letter out, only 3 of them were apparently in action against the landlord. And I have been at the podium asking specifically, of those 8 letters, how many were letters to the landlord with a tenant copy, and how many were to the tenant with a landlord copy? I'm still waiting for an answer. I have never publicly spoken until January 31st, 2023, because Bob Frutus told me that rent control was coming to Burbank. So I went to that meeting, all right, and I spoke. And I missed 4 meetings in those nearly 3 years. 1 is my allergies are killing me. 2 is I had COVID. 3 is I had a cousin flying in from Texas. I had to pick him up at the airport. And the 4th one, which is the best one, is it was my wife's 47th wedding anniversary.
But not yours?
You got that? Well, I'm not seem like a martyr because Mike Darien came on his anniversary to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I want to thank every single one of you guys for being here. This is an incredible turnout. Incredible turnout. I need this turnout on Tuesday at City Council. I want to repeat that. I need every single one of you on Tuesday at City Council. The Burbank Tenants Union will be busing
people in from all over the city, not Burbank City, Los Angeles, Tahunga, North Hollywood, Van Nuys. They will be busing them in like they did last time. We went outside after the city council meeting, we watched the bus pull up to the parking lot, and they all went in, and we followed one of the buses, went all the way to Tahunga. 5, 6 people left out. They don't even live here. They don't even provide housing here. What do? They come to intimidate. You guys are not going to be intimidated. This is not going to happen. Not in this city, not in this town. My name is Harry Tamarian. I'm the current Government Affairs Director for the Burbank Association of Realtors. I've been the past president for the Burbank Association of Realtors, and I am very happy to see this turn out. This is incredible. I want to give you some points on rent control. I want to talk briefly, bring it to your attention of why we oppose rent control. First of all, it's un-American. It's not rent control, it's price control. It's essentially telling you what you can and can't do with your own property. It's essentially telling you what you can and can't do with the down payments that you saved up for to buy the properties that you did. You can't do that. Imagine if the government came in and said, you know what, you're making a little too much money on the stock market. We're gonna limit your retirement to only 3%. You're smart, you're investing in the right stocks, it's making you 14, 22, 63. No, not gonna happen. 3% only. 3% only. Burbank tenants unions love to say, and if you ever watch any of these videos, and I highly recommend you do that, they say, well, if you can't afford this business, then sell your properties. Get out. I mean, think about that mindset. Sell your property and get out. These are 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 30-year-olds that are saying this, that have never, ever owned anything, that have never put blood, sweat, and tears into anything, and they get to sit there, they get to stand on stage and tell you, well, if you can't afford this business, then you shouldn't be in it. Who the hell do they think they are? Who do they think they are? I mean, think about that. If I ask every single one of you guys how much time you spend taking care of your properties, it'll be a thesis statement for PhD, right? This is incredible, this turnout. What is rent control? Rent control is a direct subsidization from one individual to another. That's what it is. The government wants me to subsidize somebody else's lifestyle because they don't want to do their own lifestyle. If the government wants rent control, or if the government wants to subsidize, then they should create a program in which they subsidize. One of the best examples that I have is a gentleman by the name of Hugo Soto Martinez. Do you guys know who Hugo Soto Martinez is? I'm going to tell you who he is. He is an individual that makes about $283,000 a year. He is a city councilman for the City of Los Angeles. A city councilman for the City of Los Angeles making $283,000 a year. Hugo Soto Martinez is the largest advocate of rent control. So think about this. A guy that makes $280,000 a year boasts that he lives in a rent control apartment. There is no means test for rent control. A guy making $280,000 a year is taking a unit away from an individual that truly needs that affordable housing, right? That's what rent control does. It takes away from the little people and it gives it to individuals that don't need it. That is the biggest thing about rent control. There is no means test for this. No means test. We have to show the City Council that if you want rent control, if you want any form of control on price fixing or anything like that, you provide it. This is a broad issue, if there's even an issue altogether. You need to provide it. I am not going to directly subsidize somebody else's lifestyle. I've worked way too hard for my lifestyle to be able to subsidize for somebody else. That's number one. Number two, rent registry. What does a rent registry do? Does it create more housing? No. Absolutely not. Does it help with supply? No. Absolutely not. Does it truly provide data? No. Absolutely not. Because I can tell, because I'm going to be so scared of what the city's going to do, what the government's going to do. When I fill out that form, which a lot of people do in the City of Los Angeles, they overstate the rents, right? They overstate the rents. So the government doesn't come in and say, well, why is this unit at $1,200 and why is this unit at $2,400? You should be at $1,200. So what do a lot of people do? They say everything's at $2,400. Everything is overinflated. So the government doesn't come in and tell them what to do. Rent registry does nothing to help. It does not cultivate true data. It does nothing to increase supply. And and it does nothing to increase affordability. What decreases affordability? Supply. This is a supply and demand issue. We must build. If you want to reduce rents, you have to build. That's it. We got data yesterday. We heard that almost every single entitled project in the city of Burbank, what does that mean? That means every single land that was gone through city planning to be developed into apartment buildings, every single project that was to be turned into multi-units is now up for sale. Think about that. Developers do not want to develop a single project in the city of Burbank. They've paid the money, they've got the entitlements, they've got the permits, they're not gonna build. Think about what that's gonna do. Rent control does not help development at all. I need every single one of you to come in on Tuesday, every single one of you to come in on Tuesday, get there early. You guys have been stressing that, right? Get there early. City council starts at 6 o'clock. People are saying 5 o'clock. I'm saying 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. Bring waters, bring snacks, bring your signs, wear your pins. We are gonna drown them out. We are not going to let them dictate to us, the providers of housing in the city, what we can and can't do with our housing. Thank you very much. Mike Darian, ladies and gentlemen.
These guys have done a great job. Harry, David Donahue, Ron Bax. We owe so much gratitude to them because, frankly, I've been told I have 3 to 5 minutes. It's a hell of a lot better than 1 minute, right? so thank you guys. You've done an amazing job. And I'm a real estate broker, 36 years, and also a housing provider in Burbank. And over the last several months, we've provided data. According to CoStar, for the last 10 years, rents have been a solid 3% per year. 3% per year. So where's the need for rent control? And for all the things that have happened as a result of rent control, there's so many prestigious university studies. Not one of them advocates rent control. Not one. It creates a shortage. The ones that are low rent, they stay, so they don't move. Therefore, it takes the inventory out. That's supply, right? And what happens is, because of shortage, the new ones moving in the neighborhood end up paying more because the rents go up faster because of lower supply. Not to mention, it deteriorates the properties because there isn't enough money to fix it. And I'm not a slumlord. I care about my tenants, as many of you do, and I take care of things immediately. It's a pride of ownership for me. And therefore, for them to do this, obviously, it hurts the very people they say they want to help. That's not my prognosis. That's what the studies from major universities have said. MIT, Stanford, Oxford, and on and on and on. When you're there on the Tuesday, arrive there early, and let's put up the best fight we can. I know that 3, Takahashi, Nikki Perez, and Constantine, right? Obviously, they're leading in the direction that they are. And unfortunately, these are individuals that have no business background, and they want to tinker with the market. So if it's 3%, if the free enterprise is already doing its job very well, 3%, right? If you're going to just put their ideology ahead of Burbank's needs, obviously there's going to be a lot of damage done to the housing in Burbank. So I intend to be there. I'm going to practice my 1-minute speech, make sure they say the right thing. And I like what Chris Rosati said, put it on the ballot. I think we should all end our speech that day with the same thing, put it on the ballot. Chris Rosati. And one of the things that I have in my speech, because I already prepared the rough draft, is this, that these 3 are not qualified, experienced businessmen to dare to tinker with the market. If they're doing so, it's because they're being selfish, not because of good business practice. They're not qualified, right? Look at their resume, right? And so for them to even dare to do this is a disservice because they are there for a short while. In a few years, they're out of here, right? But yet, their bad decision will live with us for a long time. Thank you.
I wanted to add one more thing. Mike just named 3 city councilmen, right? City council people. Constantine Anthony, Nikki Perez, and Tama Takahashi. I would like to read to you, really quickly, this past October 3, where Constantine Anthony's mindset is, right? The ideology that Mike talked about. Constantine Anthony on October 3 posted on his Facebook page, he said he's talking about a candidate out of Miami-Dade in Florida. He's talking about this candidate who's running for, I don't know what she's running for. She's running for commissioner. He says, independent Anna Frankel is running for Miami-Dade commissioner with her Democratic incumbent is taking on the current Republican mayor. Her entire vibe is very Gen Z influencer with kind of Barbie aesthetics. But very deep in her policy platform are key issues central to her generation, like raising taxes on landlords and developers. Like raising taxes on landlords and developers. I've never seen a campaign like this one. I'm very interested in the final turnout. Go vote for her. Like raising taxes on landlords and developers. That is where the city council's mindset is. You have it, I don't, I deserve it, I don't care how you got it, it's gonna be mine. And if you're not gonna give it to me, I have the power to raise taxes on it. Think about this, folks. Come on Tuesday.
I assume that I'm preaching to the choir. I have property in Burbank and I have property in Los Angeles. And I can tell you, in Los Angeles, it's a nightmare there dealing with the city. Recently beginning of the year, I got a request from the City of Los Angeles to explain why single-family houses that are not subject to rent stabilization. All of a sudden they said, who's living in that house? Are you living there? Do you have relatives living there? Is the house vacant? What do you intend to do? Well, what the heck? That's not their business. You want to talk about a regime where the fascists, they said, we're fascists? Are you kidding me? These people are making a consolidated effort to steal what we work for. And what they want is they want to have choices, but they don't want us to have any choices. Now they're trying to say, well, you can't look up their credit report. You can't look up their criminal background. You just got to take whoever comes and knocks on the door and let them in. These renters have absolutely no investment in the communities that they're living in. They move their stuff in, and then it doesn't suit them anymore, they move their stuff out. Yeah, sometimes they leave it, and then you're stuck getting rid of it. The way, I grew up in America, I'm older now, and I worked really hard because I believed in the economics of our society, capitalism. If you work hard, anybody can be anything they want to be. But these people don't want that. They're going to determine who gets what. Not that they're going to work for it. They just say, give it to me. You know, this is what I think and this is what I want. I'm going to hold my breath, stomp my feet until you give it in. And unfortunately, they're gaining more momentum. And we really have to fight this. Next thing you know, they're going to be knocking on the door and saying, yeah, I'm going to move in your spare bedroom. You know, the thing that bothers me the most is the vote. We have voted repeatedly in Burbank, no on rent control. No, we said no. You know, we just said no. And if they want to put it on the ballot again, that's fine with me, but I don't know that they're going to recognize the vote. And that's the problem, is that we are losing our democratic process because a bunch of people don't want to work for it and just want to take it. And whatever the vote says, whatever the people say, that's what they're going to go for. If you're a registered voter in Burbank, I sincerely urge you to vote against Nikki Perez, Tamla Takahashi, and Constantine Anthony. They're not on our side. They are Perez and Constantine Anthony ran as progressives. Takahashi did not run that way because she wasn't brave enough to say, this is where I'm coming from. And I've targeted her, I've called her out on this. You have to stand up and you have to honor the will of the people. Right. It's the will of the people. That's the American way, the will of the people. Right. Now, who are these people? We got an Uber driver and we got two other people that are unemployed. And these are the people that are going to make decisions about our property, our income. You know, this is just, it's ludicrous. It is so ludicrous what's going on right now. And we have to, the next vote comes up, we have to really rally. We have to get everybody we know. We have to support the people that we want up there because these people are going to drive not only us, but the whole town of Burbank into the ground. Thanks.
This here, the meaning of this is those 8 complaints I talked about, referred to the city attorney. That's 0.03% because there's 26,000 units in Burbank. So for 1 in every 3,000 units, there's a problem. They want to give you 100% punishment. And we found out it's really 3, so that drops it to 0.012. So every 9,000 units in Burbank reports a problem, and yet they want to impose rent control on everyone.
This is a direct quote from Constantine Anthony that he said that he had during a political debate where Harry Tamurian was a moderator, and Constantine Anthony said, and we have a video, that he wants to make rent control so severe that you are forced to sell. So you are forced to sell. Why? Because he'd like to own the apartment that he's in.
I'm giving your only tenant speaker today. My name is April Fangio, and I'm a tenant who has experienced what the BTU would call housing injustice. I had just come home from the hospital with baby number 2 when I was forced out of my living situation. I was recovering from surgery, had a toddler, and now a newborn to take care of. And now my husband and I had to find a new place to live. I know firsthand how unfair this feels and that some tenant protections are necessary to prevent situations like this. So it may come to some surprise to you that despite all that my family and I have been through, that I still oppose rent caps and rent registry proposed by the Burbank Tenant Union, or the BTU. Tenants are indeed the majority in Burbank. However, it does not mean that they all have the same opinion about rent control as the BTU. So the BTU promotes rent control as the only solution for tenants struggling to pay the rent. But I see right through this. Capping rent increases at 3% annually does little for the most vulnerable. Instead, it benefits the comfortable middle class and wealthier families who can increase their income while their rent remains low. As a resident with Burbank Housing Corporation, I have to undergo an annual means test to prove that my family qualifies for rental subsidies. And they still raise our rent even if we haven't made more money. But the BTU calls people like me the most vulnerable, but still pushes policies that don't truly help those in the greatest need, like a rent registry. The City of Burbank is considering spending millions of dollars to keep a rent registry, but what does it do for vulnerable tenants worried about making rent? Absolutely nothing. It's just a tool to punish housing providers for having the audacity for owning property, in my opinion. And what it does is I believe it sucks more of their maintenance funds instead of keeping and maintaining their property, which happens to be the home that my family lives in. Zero funds actually get to the tenants in need. If the city is considering spending millions of dollars on a registry, which will only show the same data that already exists for free, why don't they use those funds to expand subsidies for tenants in need? Expand BHC or help BHC residents like me graduate from the subsidized housing system and move into a unit of my choice, which makes room for more residents to have subsidized housing. The BTU claims to advocate for tenants' rights, but I believe they mislead our community. Their agenda, inspired by the book Abolish Rent, resembles a socialist manifesto more than a practical solution. This book, written by authors who know nothing about Burbank's unique character, outlines a plan for control, rent registries, rent caps, and stoking outrage among renters against housing providers, labeling them as oppressors. That's their plan. Does it sound familiar? I see the Burbank Tenant Union's approach as ignorant and misguided at best, and at worst, disingenuous and aimed to exploit renters' vulnerability for their own power grab. When members of the BTU heard my story, I am sure they were ready to exploit it for their own endgame. But they didn't know that I was not intending to remain a victim. What they didn't know is my husband actually had a dream of owning property someday. Shocking, doesn't everyone? My daughters and I actually, every night secretly, remind God in our bedtime prayers that is still our request, if He could put in a good word for us. We know that our dream of owning a 4-bedroom single-family home in Burbank may never happen. But we thought, what about buying a trailer class and becoming housing providers? With hard work and sacrifice and dedication, it is possible that we could live in one unit and rent out the other 2, or 3, or whatever, right? Yeah. Yes. And that we would eventually pay it off and leave a legacy for our girls. And I promise I would never let what happened to me and my family happen to one of my residents. This is our dream. It's the American dream, but the BTU dismisses it. Their policies don't support renters like me who aspire to build a better future. Instead, they seem to push government control. where no one owns anything and you're supposed to be happy about it, and individual rights are eroded. When I hear your stories that we've gathered throughout the last several weeks, I can see how rent caps and rent registries actually put fear and insecurity into your hearts and into your minds. And rent registries and rent caps do not make me feel relieved as a renter for a minute. It makes me feel hopeless for my family's future. That is why I won't let the BTU turn Burbank into a place that stifles opportunity. I stand against the BTU's version of tenant protections because I believe in a Burbank that uplifts its residents, not one that restricts their dreams. With that, I would also thank you very much. I would like to introduce you to a housing provider, a special one in Burbank, who believes in just this. He has written a book called Wealth on Any Income, a book that I am working through, and he has a passion, a housing provider here in Burbank, who has a passion of uplifting his residents. Ladies and gentlemen, Rennie Gabriel.
Hi folks, I'm Rennie Gabriel. I am a housing provider here in Burbank. I bought our first property here in 2007, so it's going on 18 years now, where I have an interest in what happens in Burbank. I'll give you a good example of the importance that having quality tenants and being a quality housing provider means. During COVID, where a lot of tenants decided they didn't need to pay rent and wouldn't pay rent, 100% of my tenants paid 100% of their rent. Why? Because I have a relationship with them. I am not some major corporation that doesn't care about my tenants. When something goes wrong, it gets addressed immediately. I'm having to spend the savings that it took me a lifetime to create to protect my life savings from the City Council of Burbank for the socialists who want no one to own property. As Chris Rosati and others have said, why not pay attention to what the voters in Burbank want, which is they don't want rent control. So put it on the ballot again. Do it for a third time. We've already turned it down twice. Now, I asked at the last meeting of the City Council, I spoke to both Constantine Anthony and Nikki Perez and requested, as renters, they recuse themselves from anything to do with voting on rent control. And the reason for it is, they told Chris Rosati, they reported him to the Fair Practices Commission, that he should not be allowed to vote on tenant issues because he owns rental property. Well, they're renters, so they shouldn't be voting on it either. I have a unit that's coming available on North Myers, and I'm not getting the response that I was getting. The previous tenant was paying $23.95 for a one bedroom. They got a washer dryer, they got garage parking, they've got a backyard, and I'm not getting the inquiries, which means I'll probably be reducing the rent. It's not going up, it's going down. So the new renter is probably going to be paying less. As you've already heard, the Burbank Tenants Union, BTU, is busing people in. They don't pay taxes here, they don't own property here, they should have no say in convincing our city council what to do to us housing providers. As an example, Proposition H passed in Pasadena, and here's what those kind of people who got that into place have to say. I don't think that the political analysis of most tenants in the city is still pretty underdeveloped, and this is the first step. Our next step is to heighten the antagonism between us and the landlords. They want to divide and conquer. They don't care about doing what's fair. That's why all of you need to show up at 4 o'clock at the next City Council meeting, which is next Tuesday, and fight for your rights. This is the United States. We operate under a constitution. This is similar to the Communist Manifesto, and if that's what you want Burbank to turn out like, stay home.
One thing that I failed to mention is the City Council back in September of 2023 allocated $500,000 plus $100,000 for HALA to administrate a program to help needy tenants. They were only able to give away $270,000, okay, to qualified tenants. So there was a pilot program of what we've been advocating that worked well, didn't cost a lot, and yet the City Council buries their head in the sand.
You guys have heard of CoStar, right?
Housing information.
Yeah, they have a lot of really interesting information that's out there. We were at a meeting yesterday that Councilman Rosati and Harry Jabari, and we were there with some other people. One of the things that was mentioned, there's a report that went out from LA County on Chase Bank, and CoStar, and this was published in August. And another reason why you should sign up, go to our website and sign up for our newsletters. So this is a really interesting thing that we're going to be sending out here before Tuesday. So it talks about the vacancy rate, which we believe is going to be between 9 to 10% range. Burbank is one of 36 separate markets that makes up the greater LA County multifamily residential real estate market. Now on this document, it's referenced page 26 and 27, Burbank is one of 9 markets out of the 36 that had negative rent growths. Rents went down. This is real current data. Does the City Council, have they once asked for that information? Not one freaking time. They don't care. Burbank offered the highest rate of rental concessions of the 36 marketplaces in LA County. Burbank was number 1 in rental concessions. Burbank had the second highest vacancy rate, 8% to 9%, in all of LA County, which was second only to downtown LA. Our vacancy rate is only second downtown LA. So the comment here is that Chase basically has no agenda. This is just data that's out there. One of the things that we've been doing, and again, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this out here and bring it to your attention, and why it's so important for you to stay connected to our information, to our website, and to our newsletters, is that this is the kind of crap that they're putting out there. Rennie, in council, everybody who's spoken here today has been in Burbank City Council and has made public comment to the Burbank council members, and we really appreciate that. There's other people here too, like Steve Roman is the current president of the Burbank Association of Realtors, and again, we could not be here without them and without their support, because the BAOR has been a great advocate. The other thing is just the fact that you're here and taking all this time to listen to this message, I think is very, very important.
Nikki, Constantine, Tamala, Joe, Daniel, all your other Democratic Socialist friends. I get it. We get it that you're miserable, that things are expensive. But guess what? They're expensive for us too. And we're suffering. That's why we need each other. And the answer is not to break the backs of the property owners. Give it some thought. I think